So there are so many questions here, at least half a dozen questions that are about how do I get started doing freelance work? And that is maybe the most difficult question to answer because just in the same way that uh, every narrative about someone like coming to a conclusion involves a sort of a closing of the eyes and leaping into the abyss, this is totally freelance work is completely a leap into the abyss. You are trading the regular paycheck and the grind and the boss and the commute for uncertainty. And that is, you got to be prepared for the uncertainty because it sucks. Your anticipation of the uncertainty is right. You're thinking, wow, I'm not sure where rent's going to come from. That's going to be pretty stressful. And the answer is, yeah, it totally is. So how to start freelancing is maybe one of the most difficult questions, but I'd love to talk about a few aspects because first question, Phil Redbeard says, I was wondering about how to manage the conundrum of wanting to work full time as a freelancer versus needing steady employment to pay the bills. I was recently laid off from my job and wondering if this might not be an opportunity to try something different. Always an opportunity to try something different. And when I was freelancing for all of my income, every day I did not have a job, I still got up at the same time, went to the shop, called everyone in my Rolodex. I treated not having work like my job to go get work. And I had several different ways I would do that. So I worked in television, in commercial special effects. This is when I was first freelancing and model making. And as such, you call producers that you worked for and say, hey, I'm available in case you need something. Proximity is really a vital thing when you're freelancing. And I don't mean physical proximity, but I mean being at the top of people's minds. So I would call old producers that I worked with. And if that didn't pan anything out, I'd call the shops I worked with. I would call Jamie. I would call Josh Corral over at Acme. I would call other friends that were freelancing and just ask about the landscape. I would go out to lunch with Jamie Heineman once a year to just talk about what we were doing lately. And that was part of me keeping tabs on what was going on, but also keeping myself at the top of various people who could offer me work, keeping myself at the top of their mind. And frankly, that's kind of the marketing, right? That's part of the marketing. The other thing I would do with that time is I would think about other industries that might be viable. So when you're a model maker, it turns out you can build stuff for commercials. You can also build toy prototypes. Building toy prototypes in advance of Toy Fair in New York in February or in Anaheim in March is a fantastic way to make real dough. It's hard work because you're building perfect objects for unforgiving clients who pay sometimes fortunes for those prototypes. I know that Jamie did a Flower Fairies prototype, and it was well into the six figures for this literally machined masterpiece he built with a couple of machinists where everything worked the way it was going to work in the toy, except that theirs was all hand machined metal gears and such. And that was low six figures, like over $100,000 for that job, I believe. So toy industry is one. Magic industry. I remember calling shops in Las Vegas and asking about work coming in and building magic effects because I thought, oh, I'd be pretty good at that. And no amount of that work removes the uncertainty of freelance. No amount of that work removes the uncertainty of freelance. Seriously, I still am like, great, this month's mortgage is paid. Where's next month's coming from? I still have never sort of relaxed the freelancer's mind. And you got to either love it or be able to tolerate it without damaging your mental health, or maybe you shouldn't be doing it. But there is no amount of feathering your bed and making your space that is going to make you feel confident going into freelancing that it's going to pay off. It's a grind. It's a different grind than having a job, and it's for some people and not for others. So I want to give that as the overarching thing about starting in freelance. Within that, there's other questions about marketing and stuff like that, so I'll get to those. Ryan Peck says, you've mentioned before having been warned in advance of difficult clients. Is that something you prefer to know going into a job, or would you rather not know so you can form your own opinion without the preconceived notion from someone else's experience? Oh no, I totally want to know. I totally want to know. And if you are passing someone you think is a difficult client onto someone you know, it behooves you to tell them. I once sent a client that Jamie wanted to go away to Josh Corral at Acme Scenery, an institution here in San Francisco for a couple of, like 2.5 decades. And I didn't warn Josh that this client was a pain in the ass. And he called me up a week later and was like, dude, I know that you're young and you didn't know, but you got to call me and let me know next time. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, man. That was asked and answered. I learned my lesson there. And I appreciated him calling me to dress me down for that, because I sent him a really difficult client and it didn't occur to me to warn him. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Okay, I was like 25. You always have to take the advice about a client that you're getting with a grain of salt. You have to think about who the messenger is. And there's always a possibility that a client, someone one of your colleagues hated, is going to be a client that you love. That totally could happen. But forewarned is forearmed. And I want to know about my clients before I do a job for them. Oh, another industry that model making can happen in is the pharmaceutical industry. And nobody's got deeper pockets than those guys. Holy cow, do they pay a fortune for stuff. It's a difficult plasma pool to jump into, because there are people that do that work and they way overcharge for it, and the pharmaceutical companies pay for that. And so frankly, you can, it's a thing, because literally the pharmaceutical industry might pay like 10x. If you're in the pharmaceutical industry, I mean, come on, you guys know this, right? You definitely overpay for stuff because people smell that money. Isn't that maybe one of the problems with U.S. healthcare? That's for a different Q&A. But yeah, pharmaceutical industry, model making. Store display is a great place to do model making. There's not a lot of dough in it necessarily, but well, there's other questions about jobs that you take for free, so we'll get to those. Difficult clients, I want to know beforehand. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced Word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.